Today we're talking about using complementary colors, particularly for creating color harmony. But there's a lot of ways to use complements. Of course, one is every time you mix a color, you want to at least mute it slightly with a little bit of the complement. So if a color is mostly a blue, use a little orange. That is a red violet. Use a little bit of yellow green, and so on. That way, everything is at least a tiny bit or slightly muted. So at the end of the painting, you can decide where you want your strongest color without any of the complements, maybe. And that way it'll stand out more. But it also creates harmony in your painting because everything is slightly muted, except for that one spot you want to stand out more. The other thing we can think of, just warm and cool. On either side of red and green, we have, all the cool colors over here and all the warm colors over on this side. Red and green are kind of neutral. To warm up green, you have to have yellow to have a yellow green, and blue to have blue green. Same thing with red. It takes something to make them warm or cool. But all the other colors are either on the cool side or warm side. And everything on the cool colors has a little bit of blue in it. And everything on the warm side has a little bit of yellow in it. So that's the key, is the yellow and orange. So if I mix up something in a painting that's warm, a sunlit yellow-green tree, I can add anything to it that's cool. But blue, violet, violet, red, violet, all those will knock it down. The complement, the red violet, would mute it the most. But it doesn't have to be that. Anything cool could mute any of the warm colors. And the same thing with the cool side. Anything that's warm is going to make that color slightly muted. The complement will get it gray if you want it that strong. And everything else will knock it down a little bit. So if I have some blue-violet mountains or violet mountains and I want to gray it in my painting, I don't have to add the complement. I could use a color on either side or anything that's even warm. By the time I get to red, though, it's not warm anymore necessarily, so that won't gray it. But the red, orange, orange, yellow, and yellow-green will mute that violet distant mountain. And again, it also creates color harmony. So, because you're adding big colors that are going to affect all the larger shapes. And you're thinking in terms of muting them slightly. And basically, every time you mute something, you're going to make it more harmonious with what's around it. It's when we use straight colors, like a blue sky, we use just blue with white. Or if you have a green tree, we just use green with white. Those are going to jump out. But a little bit of the complement, or colors surrounding the complement, or warm to knock down a cool color, or cool to knock down a warm color. So all that harmonizes colors, makes them work better together, as well as graying them slightly. Some other ways to create color harmony. And color harmony is also, obviously it means that the colors all kind of hang together, nothing jumps out. But it's also a more simple way of thinking of color. So the more I reduce the color palette, the easier it is to get color harmony, and easier it is to think about what colors I need to mix. So if I use a primary palette of just red, yellow, and blue, my colors are going to be easier to mix because I only have 3 choices. But I'm also going to get a lot of color harmony because everything will have pretty much some kind of red, yellow, and blue in it. I'll have one area or one color dominate in an area. Like if I'm mixing a blue-green, I'll have blue and yellow with a little bit of red as the complement. The blue will probably dominate though because the local colors are blue-green. Or on a sunny day hitting the tree, I might have, again, yellow, blue, and red, but yellow will dominate because it's a lighter tree and more yellow to make a yellow-green, and the yellow will dominate. But I'm still using all 3. And when I use a limited palette, I tend to try and get all 3 colors everywhere except where I want something to stand out. But typically, I never want grass to be just green, sky to be just blue, a red barn to be just red. You have to have other colors in there that are in the surrounding shapes to create some color harmony. So sometimes we get to thinking too much about if I want a brighter object to stand out more, I just need more of a pure color in there. And that's not the case. You lose color harmony, and it's easier or more effective to mute the colors around it to make something look stronger. But stay away from using straight color. Again, at the end, as an accent, you can put maybe 2 colors, maybe 1, but I rarely do that. I mean, that would really stand out and draw the attention, but it might be too much. And the other, any kind of limited palette, it doesn't have to be just 3. I could have, you always want to think in terms of the primaries, but I could have a warm and a cool. So a cad red and alizarin crimson, that gives me a warm and a cool red. And a blue and viridian gives me a warm and a cool blue. Viridian, although we think of it as green, is really a very bluish green. Or we could go blue-violet and ultramarine blue, having the blue-violet be in the warmer blue and then ultramarine be in the cooler blue. Everything's kind of relative. Same thing with the yellow. I could have a cad yellow light as my warm and then a yellow ochre as my cooler yellow. And that's 6 colors. And it gives me a warm and a cool of each. And I still get color harmony because I'm still going to have some kind of yellow, red, and blue in everything I mix. And you can go to burnt sienna is a red, ultramarine blue is the blue, and a yellow ochre is the yellow. Very earth color palette, but it really works well. And again, everything gets harmonized. Everything's muted, more muted because you're using the earth colors. And you can get into split complementary analogous colors. They all are very harmonious because you have a limited palette and you're using the same group of colors everywhere in your painting. And lastly, we want to think about maybe mixing a gray and using that gray to mute the colors and harmonize by adding a little bit of that gray to everything. Now, obviously not the same amount of gray. Some color is going to be a lot more grayer or muted, and I'm going to add more gray to it. And others are going to be brighter and stronger, and I'll add less, a lot less. But I will still add some, and that's going to make everything harmonize. So if I mix, and generally when I do this, I'll use 2 different grays, blue and orange. And I will have a warm and a cool of each, one with a little more blue, one with a little more orange. And then I might have a couple of values of each. A little bit darker and lighter. So I'll just mix 1 pile, but maybe have 2 more values, one kind of a middle and one a light. You always start as dark as you can without any white. Then you can mix up a couple of more piles that are progressively a little bit lighter. The other would be the violet and cad yellow. And I would use the cad yellow instead of ochre because you're starting stronger. You can always, you're creating gray anyway. It gives you a little bit stronger looking or a little more colorful looking gray, if that makes sense. And then the same thing here. I have 2 piles, one a bit more yellow and one a bit more violet. So one's cooler, one's warmer, and a couple of values of each. And I would use those to gray the colors, to mute the colors, and to create harmony in there. But what I want to do is apply that to this image. And I like the composition. I could crop it some. I don't know that I will. But I pretty much like the whole image. One of the few maybe I wouldn't crop. But I like the values. The values read pretty well. It's close to midday. I think it's later afternoon, but close to midday. And the values the planes are really separated. You can see the vertical trees, even the light ones over here on the left side, still got a strong dark in them. So they really separate from the lighter flat plane. The water, the grass, the meadows back in here. And the upright trees, shrubbery are a lot darker, and the slanted mountains are a lot darker. So I really want to stick with the composition and stick with the values between the planes. And the sky also, while it looks busy, what I have is 1 value for the sky, 1 value for the shadow on the clouds, and 1 value for the light. Now there's halftone in there, and I can achieve that just by blending the light and dark value in the clouds to get some halftone. So simplifying everything is the key value-wise, so that I can think in terms of the color. If I don't simplify these values in this photograph, and this photograph's not real complicated, but if I don't simplify them even more, the color is going to be a lot harder. So really focus on 2 values for shrubbery, trees, 1 value for the flat plane. Keep everything very, very simple and get the right relationship between each value, between each plane. the value relationship. Now this is the changes I've made, and this is with red, orange, yellow, orange, and blue. And I've gone with the idea of, red, orange trees and yellow, orange trees. Now the more grayer colors are the effect of adding blue to both the red, orange, and the yellow, orange. So I don't have very many strong colors here. I could come in with a, and this doing this on Photoshop isn't really going to be that accurate, but it gives you an idea of how the colors are going to look. And you can see how much I've muted these colors with blue. Now technically, I've just used the gray, red, orange on the palette of the Photoshop, but it would be pretty close to adding blue to the red, orange. But this is straight. It's a little more of a orange. Let's go red, orange a little more. So this would be straight red-orange, where I'm using the cadmium orange with a little bit of cadmium red in it. Makes it more of a reddish orange. And that's real strong. That's maybe without any blue in it. So you can see I've muted it quite a bit. And I could come back and I could use a little bit stronger color in some of these oranges, as long as I get it the right value. So pop a little bit stronger color, but everything's slightly muted, except for those colors I just put down, which I'm going to get rid of. Everything's slightly muted. But the value changes is what makes the difference, what makes it work. But the colors harmonize because everything has all three of those colors in it. Even the sky, I glazed over the clouds in the sky with a yellow-orange, which would be the equivalent of mixing a little bit of yellow-orange in everything in the sky. But 3 values in the sky, 3 values in the tree and shrubbery, maybe 4 at the most. However many value changes I have in the water. I have them mapped out here. I've simplified the values quite a bit. And that makes the color easier. Here, the red-orange with blue gives me this color. Red-orange with a little less blue. This is the yellow-orange. This is a lighter red-orange with blue. This is yellow-orange with a lot of blue, which makes it a very muted green. And I should probably lighten the grass here. I think darken is what I should do. I think it's a little too light. So this is the yellow-orange with a little bit of blue in it. But my focus is separating those planes. I probably have the lights on the trees and shrubbery too much the same value as the ground. So I have to decide. A lot of times I will get a canvas board, just a cheap canvas board, maybe a 18 by 24. And I do little 4 by 5, 3 by 5, 4 by 6, whatever shape I need. Little thumbnail color sketches of how I work out the color schemes. And that's real helpful. I can do it in about 15-20 minutes because you're not doing anything but blocking in a simple dark and light in each of the planes. But it gives you a feel of what the colors do together. So again, this is my color scheme I'm going to use, the red, orange, yellow, orange, and ultramarine blue. And looking at some paintings here, this is a painting by Hanson Putoff. But you can see the color harmony here. Everything is very muted. Even the somewhat stronger yellow ochre grass, very muted by the blue-violet. It's kind of a blue-violet, yellow-orange color scheme. But all the colors harmonize. They all stick together because the palette is very limited. Not much variation of all. I don't see any red anywhere. Just a lot of blues and yellows mixed in there. This is also a Hanson Putoff. And here he's got a lot of shadow here. Down here is shadow. Up here is mostly sunlight. And here he's graying the shadow area with a cooler color. Don't know what it is. Could be the complement, but it's definitely a cooler color. And you can see how muted the sunlight is up in here. Again, a warm color, probably muted with some kind of cool color. Orange and violet or orange and blue, which are complements. But a lot of harmony there because everything is slightly muted, either with a complement or a gray. I think he used complements. This blue is pretty strong, jumps out. Probably the strongest color in the painting. And this is by James Jackson. He was an Australian painter, turn of the century. And while some of these colors look real bright, they are just less muted than the colors around it. To isolate some of these colors, especially in the water, on the rocks, it's very grayed. And he doesn't use any real strong color. The blue here is strong, that one's strong. But they're still muted. They're just not muted as much as everything else. Rocks here are an orange with blue. Here's a blue violet, probably with a little bit of ochre in it. Using the complements to really knock things down, but nothing's too grayed. Or he's not using too much of a flat gray anywhere. You could, but he doesn't. Even some of the shadows are fairly strong color. But he's just holding back the strong colors till the end. Probably that red's the strongest, and then the blue here. But everything else is very, very muted.